The night Ethan Cole almost lost control of everything, the world still called him the untouchable billionaire. But behind the gates of his glass mansion, a single father was quietly breaking. This is the billionaire single dad and the teacher who saved his family. Hello guys, welcome to my channel, where interesting stories of love, communication, and empathy are told. If you're enjoying this already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, share with your friends, and tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. Ethan Cole sat in the dim glow of his study, staring at the framed photograph on his desk. His late wife, Aliana, was smiling in the sunlight, their daughter Liana perched on her lap. The picture used to represent everything he lived for. Now, it reminded him of everything he had lost. Outside the large glass windows, his mansion looked calm, tall palm trees swaying gently, trained security lights scanning the lawn. But inside, nothing felt steady anymore. Money had bought him comfort, protection, and silence, but not peace. Not the kind he used to know. The housekeeper, Mama Ruth, knocked softly. "Sir." She locked herself in again. Ethan closed his eyes. "Which room this time?" "Her mother's studio," Mama Ruth whispered. Of course. It was always the studio lately, the room filled with Aliana's unfinished paintings, preserved exactly as she left them. It was the one place Ethan avoided, but Liana clung to it as if the walls still whispered her mother's name. He stood and walked through the long hallway, his footsteps echoing against marble floors that felt too cold these days. At the door, he tapped lightly. "Liana. Sweetheart. It's Daddy." No response, just quiet breathing from the other side. "Please open the door," he said, voice cracking slightly. A small sniffle, his heart squeezed. Since her mother's passing 2 years ago, Liana had transformed from a bubbly 8-year-old into a shadow, quiet, withdrawn, and easily overwhelmed. He had tried everything. Therapists, grief counselors, nannies, tutors, new hobbies, trips abroad. Nothing reached her. Nothing softened the wall she built around herself. Ethan leaned his forehead against the door. "I'm here, okay? I'm not going anywhere." Still nothing. Another wall he couldn't break through. And yet, outside this door, the entire city worshipped him. Billionaire, mogul, powerhouse. People bowed when he entered a room, but his daughter wouldn't even look at him. It was the one failure he couldn't hide behind money. Hello guys, welcome to my channel, where interesting stories of love, communication, and empathy are told. If you're enjoying this already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, share with your friends, and tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. As he walked away from the door, defeated once again, his phone buzzed. The school principal? He braced himself. "Mr. Cole," she began once he answered. "I'm truly sorry to call this late, but we need to discuss Liana again. Her new teacher reported a troubling incident today." "Of course, another incident. What happened?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice even. She refused to speak during class. When another student asked her a question, she burst into tears and ran out. "This is the 3rd time this month." A pause. Her teacher, "Miss Hart would like to meet you tomorrow." Ethan sighed. Meetings with teachers never went well. They always looked at him like he was trying to solve emotions with bank transfers. "I'll be there," he said. After the call, he sat on the staircase, elbows on his knees. The mansion felt too large, too quiet. Every empty space reminded him of Aliana. She used to fill the house with warmth, music in the living room, laughter echoing through the kitchen, the smell of her vanilla candles. Now, it was just Ethan, Liana, and the ghost of who they used to be. Later that night, after Liana was asleep, he walked into her room. She was curled on one side of her bed, small, fragile, holding the sleeve of her mother's old sweater like a shield. Her eyelashes were still damp. "I don't know how to do this," Ethan whispered, brushing a strand of her hair aside. "But I'm trying. I promise. I'm trying." He remembered the way she used to run toward him after school, arms spread wide, shouting, "Daddy." She hadn't done that in 2 years. Now, she barely spoke full sentences. He stayed by her bedside a long time, maybe too long. But it was the only place in the world where he felt grounded. When morning finally came, he dressed in a simple navy shirt. No expensive suits today. This meeting wasn't about status. It was about Liana. At the school, children ran across the playground, laughter filling the air. Ethan watched them with a strange ache in his chest. They were carefree, light, everything his daughter used to be. Mr. Cole, he turned. The principal approached with a warm, practiced smile. Thank you for coming. Miss Hart is waiting in her classroom. He followed her down a hallway, painted with colorful murals. When they reached the door, the principal knocked once and stepped aside. Inside, Camille Hart stood beside her desk, arranging papers. She looked younger than he expected, maybe early 30s, with gentle eyes and a calm presence that seemed to soften the entire room. No jewelry, no heavy makeup, no nervous expression. She turned toward him with a respectful nod. Good morning, Mr. Cole. Most teachers reacted to him with stiff politeness or hidden fear. Camille didn't. She carried herself with an ease he wasn't used to. Thank you for seeing me, Ethan said. Of course. She gestured to a pair of chairs. Please, sit. He did. Camille sat across from him, fingers interlaced. I want to assure you first. Liana is not in trouble. She's grieving. And grief in children doesn't always look gentle. Her voice was soft but steady, empathetic, not pitying. Ethan exhaled slowly. You're not, Camille said firmly. But she's hurting in a way that needs patience, not pressure. He blinked, surprised. No one had spoken that plainly to him in years. Camille continued. Liana is smart, observant, and deeply emotional. She hides because she feels too much. And she needs someone who can sit with her in that silence. Ethan swallowed, absorbing every word. Camille wasn't lecturing him. She wasn't impressed by him. She was simply present. What do you suggest I do? He asked quietly.
What do you suggest
Camille
I do?
smiled a small, warm, assured smile. Let's start by working together. She trusts you more than you think. And she needs to see that you're still there, even in the hard moments. A strange relief washed over him. For the first time in a long time, someone wasn't blaming him. Someone was helping. Camille stood. If you're open to it, I'd like to try a few techniques with her. And with you. With me? He asked, surprised. Yes, healing is a family process. Something in Ethan's chest shifted hope, maybe. And somewhere deep inside him, a quiet voice whispered, maybe this woman will reach Liana. Maybe she will reach all of us. Camille Hart watched Ethan with the steady calm of someone who understood broken things, not because she had studied them in books, but because she had lived through a few cracks herself. As he sat there, shoulders tense beneath his simple navy shirt, she noticed something most people missed. Beneath his power, wealth, and carefully maintained composure was a father who was simply tired of failing the one person he loved most. Before we start, Camille said softly, I want you to know that you're not alone in this. Her tone wasn't pity. It was partnership, a bridge. Ethan nodded once, absorbing the kindness like someone unused to receiving it. Camille motioned toward the small reading corner of the classroom. This is where I talk to my students when they're overwhelmed. It makes the world feel smaller, safer. She picked up a small woven pillow. Liana sat here yesterday. She didn't speak, but she stayed. That's a step. Ethan's brows lifted. She stayed? Yes. Camille smiled lightly. She was angry, but she stayed in the room. That means she didn't want to run. She wanted to be understood. Those words hit Ethan harder than he expected. He had grown accustomed to seeing his daughter bolt from anything painful. The idea that she stayed even silently felt like a door cracking open. Camille continued. If she allows, I'd like to work with her, one-on-one during break hours. No pressure, just presence. Whatever you need, Ethan said instantly. Camille chuckled quietly. We'll need more than resources, Mr. Cole. We'll need patience, consistency, and honesty. From both of you. He nodded again, slower this time, as if surrendering to a truth he had been avoiding. Just then, a soft knock came at the door. Leanna peeked inside, her small face half hidden behind the frame. She wasn't supposed to be there. Mama Ruth usually picked her up later, but something in her gaze told Camille she had been listening for the right moment to enter. Camille's voice dropped into a gentler register. "Hi, sweetheart. Come in." Leanna stepped inside carefully, her shoulders tucked inward. Her hair, neatly braided that morning, now had strands sticking out from where she'd been tugging it anxiously. Ethan immediately rose, but Camille subtly lifted a hand. "Let's give her space to choose." He froze, then slowly sank back into the chair. Leanna moved toward Camille, not speaking, but her eyes darted between her father and her teacher. Camille kneeled to her level, keeping her voice soft. "We were talking about you," she said with a smile. "Good things." Leanna shifted her weight, then released a small whisper. "Am I in trouble?" "No," Camille said warmly. "You're in healing." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He had never heard anyone speak to his daughter like that. Camille nodded toward the reading corner. "Do you want to sit with me a minute?" she asked. To Ethan's shock, Leanna nodded. Camille led her gently, sitting cross-legged on the colorful rug. Leanna sat beside her, hugging the pillow Camille had shown earlier. Ethan watched silently, barely breathing. "So," Camille said softly, "yesterday, it looked like you had a big feeling. Was it sadness? Or was it something else?" Leanna shrugged. I don't know." "That's okay," Camille said. "Sometimes, feelings are like puzzles, missing pieces. You don't have to know everything yet." Leanna blinked, surprised by the metaphor. Camille took a deep breath. "Can you tell me one thing that made yesterday hard?" Leanna plucked at the edge of the pillow. "They talked about moms." Her voice quivered. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, pain flashing across his face. Camille nodded, her tone steady. "That must have been heavy." "It was," Leanna whispered. Camille didn't reach for her. She didn't rush. She simply stayed, present, silent. Exactly what Leanna needed. After a moment, Camille asked, "Would you like your dad to join us, or do you want him to stay there for now?" Leanna hesitated. Then, without looking at Ethan, she whispered, "He can come, if he wants." Ethan stood instantly, but Camille mouthed, "Slow." He inhaled, then walked gently toward them, lowering himself onto the rug. When he sat down, Leanna leaned closer to Camille, not rejecting him, but seeking safety first. Camille noticed and offered the bridge. "Leanna," she said softly, "can you tell your dad the same thing you told me?" "Only if you want to." The little girl swallowed, her lips trembled. But then, very slowly, she nodded. "Daddy," she whispered. "They talked about moms." Ethan's breath hitched. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush, didn't try to fix it. He waited. "It made me sad," Leanna said, voice thin as thread. Ethan nodded, tears warming his eyes. "I know. Sweetheart. I miss her too." Camille watched them with quiet pride. This was the breakthrough she had hoped for, not dramatic, not loud, but honest. Leanna sniffled and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm tired of being sad," she whispered. Ethan gently
I'm
placed his hand
tired
on
of
the
being
rug beside
sad.
her, not touching her, just offering. "I'm tired too," he said softly. "But maybe we don't have to do it alone." Leanna stared at the space between his hand and hers. Then, bravely, she placed her small hand on top of his. It was the first time she had willingly reached for him in months. Camille smiled, her heart swelling. "That," she whispered, "is the beginning of something new." A bell rang outside. Children began pouring into the hallway, laughter echoing loudly. Ethan
That's the
glanced toward the
beginning
door.
of something new.
"I should let you get back to teaching." Camille shook her head. This was teaching. Leanna squeezed Ethan's hand once before standing. "Daddy, can you come tomorrow too?" He nodded instantly. "Anytime you want me." Camille watched father and daughter walk out of the classroom, side by side. Liana was still small, still grieving, but today she walked with lighter steps. And Ethan, for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was failing. He felt like he was fighting. The days that followed felt different in ways Ethan hadn't anticipated. Small victories, almost imperceptible, began to color their home with fragments of warmth that had long been absent. Liana laughed quietly at breakfast when her father accidentally spilled orange juice over his cufflinks, muttering, "I guess even billionaires can't buy clean shirts on time." Ethan chuckled, grateful for even a hint of her old spark. Camille visited the Cole residence 3 times a week. But it wasn't just her presence that mattered, it was the consistency, the patience she wielded like a gentle hand guiding a lost bird back to its nest. She never forced Liana to speak or to participate in activities she wasn't ready for. Instead, she offered stories, drawing exercises, and quiet games that invited dialogue without demanding it. Slowly, the rigid walls around Liana's grief began to show cracks. One evening, Ethan found Camille sitting cross-legged on the rug beside Liana's bed, a board game between them. Liana concentrated, moving pieces with careful attention, occasionally glancing at her father, then back at Camille. "Daddy," she said softly. "She says I can win if I believe in myself." Ethan smiled faintly. "And do you?" he asked. I think so," Liana whispered, eyes wide with tentative hope. Camille's hand rested gently on the edge of the board. "Believing is the first step. You don't have to win today. The important thing is to keep trying." Ethan sat silently nearby, feeling a lump in his throat. The simple act of witnessing his daughter learn, laugh, and trust again filled a space he hadn't realized had been empty. Money, power, and luxury had never done this. Only presence, patience, and empathy could. Later that week, Camille suggested an outdoor activity, a small art project, in the garden of the mansion. With Liana's hesitation gradually easing, the two of them laid out a canvas, paintbrushes, and colorful pots of acrylics. Ethan watched from a distance, pretending to check emails, but really observing his daughter's tentative strokes and Camille's patient guidance. "Remember when Aunt Mabel tried to bake cookies at midnight?" Camille whispered to Liana with a smile. The girl giggled softly, the sound echoing across the manicured lawn. As the sunlight waned, Ethan realized how much Camille had done with so little. She hadn't bought his daughter gifts or tried to impress her with stories of wealth. Instead, she had given Liana understanding, a safe space to express herself, and a model of calm reliability. It was this subtle, powerful influence that began to reshape their family dynamic. One afternoon, as Liana painted a butterfly, she paused and looked up at her father. "Daddy, do you think Mommy would like this?" Ethan swallowed hard. His voice trembled, yet he smiled. "She would be proud, sweetheart. Very proud." Liana nodded, her small hand pressing the brush lightly to the canvas again. Camille leaned in and whispered, "And I think she'd love to see you creating something beautiful with both of us here." Ethan felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years, the beginnings of trust forming between father, daughter, and teacher. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, woven into tiny gestures, shared glances, and moments of quiet understanding. That evening, Ethan and Camille stayed behind as Liana went to bed. The mansion was quiet, yet for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel empty. Ethan finally allowed himself to speak what he'd been holding back for weeks. "You've changed things in ways I didn't think possible," he admitted, voice low. "Liana, she's happier. She laughs, she talks, she looks at me again." Camille's smile was soft, almost reflective. "You did this too, Ethan. You showed up. You never gave up, even when it was hard." He shook his head slightly, looking away. "I thought showing up wasn't enough. I thought I needed to fix everything, make it perfect. But watching you, you taught me something different. Presence matters more than perfection." Camille reached for a small sketchbook and handed it to him. On the first page was a painting of Liana holding hands with Ethan, Camille beside her, all surrounded by bright sunlight. Liana had signed it with her name in careful, uneven letters. Ethan's eyes filled. She made this? Yes, Camille said, smiling. He stared at the painting for a long moment, letting the weight of their journey settle. For years, he had defined himself by his wealth, his accomplishments, and the respect others gave him. But in that room, holding a painting made by his daughter, guided by a teacher who had touched their lives with nothing but empathy, he understood something far greater. Love, patience, and presence were priceless. The next morning, Liana ran down the stairs, clutching the sketchbook, her hair slightly messy, eyes bright. "Daddy! Daddy! Look what I finished!" she exclaimed, nearly tripping over the last step. Ethan laughed and caught her just in time. "Careful, you'll hurt yourself." "I don't care," she said, hugging the book to her chest. "I want you to see." Camille entered behind them, smiling. "I think he's going to love it, Liana." Ethan looked at the pages filled with color, imagination, and emotion. His heart swelled. The fragile walls around their home were crumbling, not through wealth or force, but through patience, understanding, and quiet love. And in that moment, he realized the healing had only just begun. Camille had become more than a teacher. She had become part of their family, a presence they could rely on when the world seemed unkind. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he was eager to find out. Outside, the sun rose over the mansion grounds, painting everything in golden light. And somewhere in that warmth, Ethan felt a sense of hope bloom, small, delicate, but undeniably real. For the first time, the family he thought he had lost was beginning to come together again, piece by piece. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of the Cole household began to shift in ways Ethan had once thought impossible. Liana laughed more freely, even sneaking in a playful jab at her father when he tripped over a stray shoe in the hallway. "Careful, Daddy, billionaire legs aren't as graceful as they look," she teased. And Ethan laughed so hard he almost forgot the weight that had been pressing on him for 2 long years. It wasn't just Liana who was changing. Ethan began noticing Camille in subtle ways, the way she listened to every detail of his day without judgment, how she encouraged Liana's quirks instead of suppressing them, and how her calm, unwavering presence made the mansion feel more like a home than a display of wealth. One evening, after a long day, Ethan found himself walking into the garden where Camille was quietly tending to potted plants with Liana by her side. "Even the billionaire has to learn patience with flowers," Camille said softly, glancing up. Liana giggled. "You should see him at breakfast, Mommy in my head. He spills juice every day." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "I'm learning from the master gardener over here." Camille smiled, but didn't look up. "You're learning." "Yes. But more importantly, you're present. That's what Liana needs you. Not your money or status." He stopped walking, watching her in the fading sunlight. The way she cared for his daughter without fear or expectation, it was unlike anything he had known. He realized that for the first time since his wife's death, he wasn't just surviving, he was breathing again. That evening, Ethan and Camille stayed behind, while Liana went to bed, discussing small victories and next steps. He found himself opening up more than he had to anyone in years. "I don't know how you do it," he admitted quietly. "You walk into a home where everyone is broken, and, somehow, you fix things without even trying to prove anything." Camille tilted her head. "I'm not fixing anyone, Ethan. Healing is a process we go through together. I'm just guiding her. And you." He swallowed hard. He hadn't realized how desperately he had needed guidance too. I think I've been hiding behind wealth," he confessed. "Hiding because I didn't know how to be vulnerable, how to be a father, how to be me." Camille reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "It's okay to feel all of that. You've lost a lot, but you're here. You're showing up. That's more than most people do." For the first time, Ethan felt he could fully let his guard down. And in that vulnerability, he noticed something stirring in his heart, a warmth he hadn't felt since the day his wife had passed. It was slow and cautious, but undeniable. Affection, gratitude, and a growing sense of love for the woman who had stepped into their lives so gracefully. Days turned into weeks, and small moments of connection became stronger threads binding them together. One afternoon, Liana came running to Ethan with a school art project, a painting of their family, including Camille. "Look, Daddy, I drew all of us." Ethan took the paper, smiling through a lump in his throat. Camille watched quietly, eyes shining with pride. Liana had not only accepted Camille into their home, she had chosen to include her in their heart. Ethan knelt beside his daughter. "This is beautiful, Liana. Thank you for sharing it with me. And with Camille too." Liana grinned. "Of course, she's family now." That night, after Liana had gone to bed, Ethan lingered in the living room, thinking about Camille. He realized he didn't want this connection to remain only about parenting and healing. The admiration and respect he felt for her were evolving into something deeper. His heart, so long buried under grief and obligation, was rekindling. Camille, unaware of his quiet reflection, prepared for the next day, arranging her lesson plans. Yet, when their eyes met briefly as she passed the doorway, an unspoken understanding lingered. Both of them recognized the growing bond, even if neither had yet spoken its name aloud. It wasn't love, forced by circumstance or convenience. It was something fragile and real, trust built over shared pain, laughter, and quiet victories. And as Ethan watched Camille tuck Liana into bed the following night, reading softly until her daughter's eyelids drooped, he knew he could no longer ignore the truth. This woman had healed more than Liana's grief. She had gently mended pieces of him that he had believed lost forever. The next morning, during a rare moment of calm in the mansion, Ethan finally asked Camille to join him in the garden. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden glow over the lawn. "Camille," he began, voice hesitant yet steady, "I don't know how to say this without sounding foolish." She smiled gently, encouraging him to continue. I know. You've changed our lives. Liana trusts you. I trust you. And I care for you. More than I thought I could care for anyone again." Camille's hand hovered over a small pot she had been holding. She didn't rush, letting the words sink in. "Ethan, I care for you too," she said softly. "Not as a billionaire. Not as someone who can buy a life. I care for the man who shows up for his daughter, who doesn't give up, who is willing to be vulnerable. That's the man I care for." The air between them shifted, warm and undeniable. Their eyes met, a mutual understanding and unspoken promise forming. Slowly, Ethan took her hand in his, feeling the steady heartbeat of trust and affection. In that moment, a long, slow chapter of grief, struggle, and rebuilding came to its first true resolution. They weren't just healing, they were choosing each other. Together, they were forming a family, not defined by wealth, but by love, patience, and loyalty. And somewhere in the quiet of that morning, Ethan knew one day soon, he would ask Camille to become more than a teacher or family friend, to become his partner, officially, forever. The sun climbed higher, and the mansion no longer felt empty. Liana's laughter echoed in the halls, a sound of joy and restoration. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt the fullness of hope, love, and the possibility of happiness not bought by money, but earned through compassion, trust, and unwavering connection. The morning sunlight streamed through the mansion windows, painting the walls in soft gold. Liana sat cross-legged on the living room floor, scattered puzzle pieces surrounding her, her small fingers carefully fitting each one into place. Camille watched patiently from across the room, while Ethan leaned against the doorway, quietly observing. The puzzle wasn't just a game, it had become a symbol of the slow, steady rebuilding of their family. Liana's brows furrowed as she struggled to fit a stubborn piece. "This one doesn't go here," she exclaimed, tossing it lightly. Camille smiled, leaning closer. "Sometimes puzzles need a fresh perspective. Want me to help?" Liana shook her head, determination in her eyes. No, I want to do it myself. Ethan stepped into the room slowly, careful not to startle her. She's right, he said gently. We can't rush things. Sometimes the best moments come when we take our time. Camille glanced at him, warmth in her eyes. You're learning too, Mr. Cole. He chuckled quietly, a sound that hadn't echoed through the mansion in years. I'm trying. For weeks now, this had become their new rhythm: shared mornings, quiet afternoons, small victories that stitched together a family once fractured by grief. Liana laughed more freely, spoke her feelings without fear, and often ran to Camille with news from school or stories of her day. The mansion, once a silent reminder of loss, now resonated with the kind of laughter that money could never buy. That afternoon, a knock came at the door. Ethan opened it to find a small group of teachers from Liana's school, holding flowers and gifts for a celebration. It's our appreciation day for Miss Hart, one of them explained. Camille shook her head, laughing softly. Oh, you don't have to. It's the least we could do, another teacher interrupted, smiling at Liana. You've changed lives here, Miss Hart. Ethan watched as Camille accepted the flowers with humility, feeling a swell of admiration. She had come into their lives quietly, without demands or expectations, yet her impact had been profound. Later that evening, the three of them sat together on the patio, overlooking the city skyline. Liana, exhausted but happy, rested her head on her father's shoulder. Ethan's hand brushed gently against hers, and he felt a surge of gratitude for the little girl who had taught him patience and vulnerability. Daddy, Liana murmured, looking up at him. I like Miss Hart. She's nice. Ethan smiled, glancing at Camille. Camille's eyes softened as she watched Ethan interact with his daughter. The bond between father and daughter had deepened, and her own place in their lives felt secure, not because of a title or obligation, but because of trust and shared love. As night fell, Ethan found himself walking Camille to the door. The mansion was quiet now, but the warmth lingered. Camille, he began, voice low but steady. I can't imagine this life without you. Not just for Liana, but for me. You've given us something no money ever could: presence, care, and love. And I want to give you the same.
I
Camille
can't
looked
imagine
up,
this life
her
without
eyes
you.
glistening in the soft lamplight. Ethan, he took a deep breath.
I can't
holding her
imagine this
hands
life
gently.
without you.
Will you marry me? For a heartbeat, silence hung between them. Then Camille's lips curved into a radiant smile. Yes, she whispered, her voice full of warmth and certainty.
Will you marry me?
Yes, Ethan, I will. Liana, who had quietly appeared at the top of the stairs, squealed with delight. Really? You're going to be my mommy too? Ethan scooped her up, spinning her gently. Yes, sweetheart, she's joining our family, officially. Camille knelt down to hug Liana, and the little girl threw her arms around her, feeling complete and safe for the first time in years. The mansion, once silent and cold, now glowed with love, laughter, and unity. Weeks later, the engagement was celebrated with a small, intimate gathering. Friends, family, and a few teachers attended, but the focus remained on the bond they had forged. A father, his daughter, and the woman who had quietly healed them both. Ethan and Camille stood together, hands intertwined, Liana between them, smiling as the sun set behind the city skyline. To family, Ethan said, raising a glass. To love that heals, Camille added. And in that golden evening, under fading sunlight and warm laughter, it was clear that wealth could buy many things, but not this: trust, presence, and a heart fully open to love. They had found what truly mattered: each other. And in doing so, they had rewritten the meaning of family, together. True wealth is not measured in mansions or private jets, but in the love we give and the
That's
hearts
the
we touch.
beginning of something new.
Ethan learned that showing up, listening, and being present could heal wounds money never could. Liana discovered joy and trust again, while Camille proved that compassion is the greatest gift of all. Life may bring loss, grief, and uncertainty. But patience, empathy, and love can rebuild what seems broken. Open your heart to connection. Cherish those who care, and never underestimate the power of small acts of love. They can change lives forever. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and comment the lesson you're taking home today. Your voice truly matters here.